But I'm also thinking best case scenario, she pulls this off and after 5 years, everything's paid off and she's just making 120 grand of passive income each year from her chargers. It feels like it's been forever since I filmed a video. I've been so deep into all these different Tesla Supercharger projects that I'm working on that it's been about a month since I've recorded a video. So here we go. Right now, I have about 7 or 8 active projects. I have a few that are in California, one in Maryland, one in New York. There's a few more, but today I want to talk about the project that I have in Pueblo, Colorado. So when I first met this lady, I wasn't really sure what to expect, like most of my clients that I first meet with. And I didn't like the idea that she didn't yet own this property. To me, whenever people tell me that they're, prospective owners of a property, they're just in the research stage. To me, that just tells me that we got a ways to go. They're still in the planning stages of this. But I don't know, something about this lady, I really like this lady. She's a fighter. And one of our early conversations, she said to me, only 13% of people that are in the world are doers. And she said, I'm one of those people. And once I heard that, I was like, let's go. Because to me, that shows me that she's going to fight alongside me throughout this journey. This is a long journey. And the way I've been looking at this lately is there isn't really a term for what I do. At the beginning, I was kind of saying consultant or a broker, but you can call it whatever you want. The way I kind of see this is I kind of imagine that my clients and I were standing at the edge of this really treacherous jungle, right? And they want to get to the other side of the jungle. And I've been there before. I know the way, so I can guide them. That's the way I kind of look at what I'm doing is I'm helping guide people from where they are to where they want to go. And if you're new here, my name's Trevor, and I was the director of sales for 2 different EV charging companies, but now I help guide people on how to make money from Tesla Superchargers. So back to my story, I'll tell you about what's happened in Pueblo, Colorado so far. And just so you know, to my client, I'll keep all your information private. So nobody's going to know that what I'm talking about is for you. So this was an interesting start to the journey. She reached out. She said she has her eye on this property. This property is in a absolutely prime location. And where I'm from, property is really expensive. It's so expensive that I almost never recommend that people buy a property to install Tesla Superchargers on, because the cost of the property is usually so expensive that it just kind of hurts the return on investment. It just takes so much longer for you to make your money back versus if you already own the property, like it's your business that's already on the commercial property, then adding Tesla Superchargers is a fantastic idea. So this lady came to me, my client, and she said, I want to buy this property. And right away, my instincts were like, my knee-jerk reaction was don't do it, but then she told me the price of this property and it is unbelievable. Like it's only $11,000 for this property. It's a small, very small parcel of land and it's an odd shape, but it's right near a highway and it's right beside some major department stores. So it's kind of like a unicorn, this property. And why she reached out to me was because she wants help determining if it's even possible to do what she wants to do on this property with the EV chargers. There's lots of rules, there's lots of permits, code, restrictions. Can she even bring in all that power to the site? Is there easements or other rules with all the other properties that are around that might restrict her from doing what she wants to do? So she reached out to me and she was like, I need someone to say yes or no if this is possible. And to be honest, I wasn't really sure where to go with this at first, because usually in the early stages, you want to have someone come take a look at the site, do a site visit, gather all the information. But because she didn't even own this property yet, we almost need to do like a pre-site visit or a pre-feasibility study. So what I said to her, I was like, look, let me talk to some of my design build company contacts, my installer company contacts that are in Colorado, and we'll see if we can talk to them about doing like a really simple feasibility study. So we met with one of my design build company contacts and we tried to make it as simple as possible. Like, look, this is what we have in mind for this property. We just need someone to tell us if this is even possible. Can we bring the power in? Can we put, how many chargers can we fit on this site? All those other things. And my contact, I think, was kind of like, this is a unique situation. And I asked him, if we could pay a couple grand just for you to do some rough due diligence and see if we can make this happen. The price that we got back was substantially higher than I thought it was going to be. I mean, you have to keep in mind, everything in this industry is expensive. These are big infrastructure plays. These things take a lot of time, they take a lot of money, and it's a lot of planning. I think a lot of my clients get a little bit surprised when they see thousands of dollars for plans. Like the feasibility study that we received the quote for was just under $14,000 for them to even just look to see if this is possible. Now, that might be a little bit high, but it speaks to that you have to take it seriously. It's a lot of money. Like they say that the engineering drawings, which are really the when you want to move forward with the project, the engineering package is the main first step. That's like, okay, let's get going here. Let's hit the ground running. Let's get the engineering package done. And the engineering package is usually between like 3 and 8% of the total project cost. We'll do all the work we can between us to get, verbal yeses from these rebate entities to say, yeah, you will be eligible to receive this money. So we're not going in completely blind, but it is something to keep an eye, to be aware of, that you need to pay money to see if you could get money. So once we saw that price for the feasibility study, I was like, you know what? If you're going to pay 14 grand for a feasibility study, you may as well just put that towards a real engineering package, And the nice thing, the reason why I like to use what are called design build companies versus just an electrician or an installer is design build companies, they're a one-stop shop. Everything's under one roof. You have the engineering team under one roof. You have the grant writers for the rebates underneath one roof. You have all their electricians, project managers. So what happens when you don't use a design build company is you end up getting stuck in the middle as the project manager, because what happens is the electrician's like, well, send me information from the transformer you have on site. And then the rebate people are like, well, what send me the spec sheets for the superchargers you're installing. Or the utility company is like, well, how much, so you end up transferring information all between everybody. Whereas with a design build company, they can all just communicate with each other in-house. And the even better thing is with design build companies, usually they'll let you put the money that you paid for the engineering drawings towards the project as like a deposit. So if the engineering package is 50 grand, then that will go towards your project if you do decide to move forward. It's like them trying to incentivize you to use them for your project. Whereas if you went with an independent engineer, then that money goes to them. They don't have installers, so they can't put it towards anything else. So my client, I said, look, after we saw that 14 grand, I was like, you know what? Let's just try to figure this out as much as we can on our own. Let's go through the stages. And these are the stages so far. So much of what plays the biggest role into my clients deciding to move forward with these projects or not are rebates. And I kind of have a love-hate relationship with rebates because they've helped me and hurt me equal times in the past. If a client has this expectation that they're going to receive, 80% of the cost of the project back in rebates, they think that this is guaranteed, then, of course that they're super interested. But when they find out that, the program has closed or they're not eligible, then the deal dies. And it's tough. You put months of work into a deal and it's gone when you find out this program has closed. They're very volatile, the rebates. So I always try to tell my clients, look, this investment needs to make sense to you. The numbers need to make sense without this extra funding that you could get. Imagine that these rebates don't even exist and make your decision based on what you're seeing now. It's almost like icing on top of the cake if you do get them. And it's pretty tough to say to someone because it's like, well, it makes a pretty big difference if you're going to get the rebates or not on if I'm going to do this or not, right? So I understand both sides. What I told my client was, let's do the work. Let's go through the stages. Let's talk to these different rebate entities and at least see if we can get a verbal yes or no on the chances of us getting these rebates. So if you have dreams of doing this and making money from Tesla Superchargers, feel free to give me a shout and I'm happy to help. Thanks so much for checking in and I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.